Are you a real estate professional navigating the bustling landscape of New York City, or simply someone fascinated by its ever-evolving skyline? Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to another episode of the Big Apple's CoRe, where we break down the complex world of corporate and commercial real estate. Join us as we explore the latest trends, challenges, designs, and opportunities that are shaping New York City. Today's episode is brought to you by CoreNet NYC's learning sponsor, the Rockefeller Group. Rockefeller Group, a love for people, a love for the city.
Welcome to another Big Apple CoRe podcast. We have an exciting podcast planned for you today. I'm Brian Schwegel. I am a professor of real estate at the NYU SPS Schack School of Real Estate Institute, and we have two amazing guests, Dale Schlater and Lou Nowickas, both senior executives who have been in the field for many years and close friends of mine as well, so this should be an interesting dialogue amongst us. We're focusing on continuing education, why it's important, how it's a key to your success in real estate. I want to introduce Dale and Lou to you now and let them tell you a little bit about themselves. Dale, start with you.
Thank you, Brian. Dale Schlater. I'm an executive vice chairman at Cushman & Wakefield. I'm a tenant rep broker. We call ourselves brokers, but I've started in the business in 1986 under a guy named John Cushman, who was one of the great real estate brokers of all time, which is part of this story a little bit. And but that was out in Los Angeles, and I moved to New York in 1995 and have been here since then and have worked on a lot of very large and complex transactions all around the world, actually.
Now, you're very modest, but tell us a few of the transactions you've worked on that people would be aware of, like Wells Fargo. You're working with Citadel now.
I'm actually not working with Citadel now. I wish I was working with Citadel now. I did Wells Fargo at 30 Hudson Yards. I did Jefferies headquarters. I do a lot of work with Capital One Bank. I did their 299 Park and their Midtown South work. And I've done work with Avon at 777 3rd Avenue, and work all around the world with them.
All amazing transactions.
Yeah.
So we're going to learn a lot from you. Lou, tell us a little bit about your background, what you do today, and your involvement with CoreNet as well.
Sure. Thanks for having me here. Currently I'm the Vice President of Real Estate and Facilities Planning at Hearst, just around the corner here. Started there about 20 years ago to help manage the design and construction of the Hearst Tower. Since then took over operations, and then currently now manage the entire Hearst portfolio.
And Lou, you worked for Goldman Sachs prior to this, involved in their headquarters and project that they had in Jersey City, which was an amazing transaction and very revolutionary at its time, way before Jersey City really took off as it is today. But you also have a background as an engineer and also in architecture, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. Why is continuous education important for people that are involved in the world of real estate? I find that it constantly changes. Obviously, I'm a professor at NYU and have to stay up to date on the latest trends for my students. But why is a professional organization like CoreNet important, and what does it offer them in terms of educational opportunities?
Well, a couple of different questions there, but CoreNet by itself, when I got involved with CoreNet, and that was when it started, the merger between the two prior organizations, I always have told people, and anybody that does what I do, or anybody that's involved in the occupancy side of the business, and even on the landlord side, frankly, CoreNet provides the occupier side of the business and what's important to that. So everybody, all the brokers that I know, they want to go to CoreNet and then they want to hand out their card and meet people and try, because they think they're going to, meet somebody like Lou and all of a sudden they're going to get all this business. And it doesn't work that way. The reason that CoreNet, and what I've told people to get involved with CoreNet, and everybody should, is because we need to learn what's important to Lou Nowickas. And so that's a lot of different things. And as a broker, we wear lots of different hats. So, everybody thinks that we're involved in the market, which is true. We have to know the market in New York. There's 400 million square feet. No one's that good, but you can know a lot of it. It starts there. But we do a lot of numbers, so you have to understand the finance NPV analysis. But, and back when I started, that's all you needed. But then we started talking about the accounting considerations, the P&L, and that's actually more important now than the NPV. As Lou could probably tell you, the P&L app, that's what the CFO wants to see, is what it's going to do to their results at the end of the year. Then we're not architects, but we have to understand, core to glass depth and mullion spacing and ceiling heights. So enough to know how space evolves and how it works and what space works and what doesn't. We have to be a little bit of an engineer, so we have to understand HVAC and condenser water and electricity and why that's important. And now, you have a lot of carbon things. ESG has become so important, sustainability in particular. So, and we have Local Law 97 now in New York, so understanding how all of that works. So I could go on and on. There are other things, but the point of it is we have to be learning all the time because it's always changing and evolving. And so that's, the basis of learning, however that is. And there's lots of different ways, which we'll talk about during this, to do that. But you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you have to understand some basics. And that it really doesn't matter what your job is. It's different for each job. Architects and engineers have different, but they need to understand the market. They need to understand when they're building out space. As an architect, what's that going to do to the P&L impact of building out that space, and what are how much are is the client paying versus landlords? So there's a lot
Lou,
to talk about.
he raises a lot of very good points. So how does CoreNet help you do that? I mean, how do you get that knowledge without being the necessary expert in that, but know how to reach out to experts that are?
Well, I mean, it's in the name of the organization, CoreNet, and it's a network. It's the people you meet and who you learn from. And I didn't know it when I joined CoreNet. I was told I should join CoreNet a long time ago from someone who's sitting right across from me here, and he told me, you're in this industry, you should be part of this organization. I just did what I was told. Quickly, I learned that it's not just about going to events and going to classes and that traditional learning style, which is available at CoreNet, and you have lots of events, and there's lots of more and more every year, and we should take advantage of that. But I think I learned more from meeting people in different industries, and whether it's brokers or architects or even the person who sells carpet or furniture. The amount you learn from those people one-on-one really usurps anything I learned in the classroom. And that I can apply directly to my employer and to the groups that I work for and work with. In addition to what Dale said is in our role we're jack of all trades, and I'm not an expert broker, I'm not an expert architect or engineer, but I need to understand all those aspects when I go back to my to the groups I'm serving, whether it's the user groups, and figure out what how best to design a space that's going to meet their needs and understand what their organization does, but also to my senior folks and understanding and be able to speak to the C-suite and be able to speak to the CFO who I report to in a language that he'll understand. We've sort of become interpreters of some sort between the industry and in different languages that are.
Are you able to give me some examples of innovations or breakthroughs that happened in your path while you were either at a CoreNet event or heard of things and then were able to bring it back to your organization?
Oh boy, on the spot, I can't think of anything specific.
Well, I think Dale mentioned accounting practices that he learned about, through workshops and other things that went on in CoreNet. He talked about Local Law 97.
Well, let me tell a story that we talked about a little bit that has to do with you. When you built the Hearst Tower, and from I think it was 2004, 2006 time frame, is that about right? I remember you started talking about LEED. At that time, there were only there were two people employed by USGBC, which basically stands over the LEED and gives the designation. Nobody knew what that was at the time. Everybody knows about it now. I went back to Cushman & Wakefield and had a meeting with the top producers in the New York office, and I asked the question. I said, does anybody here know, because I was pushing CoreNet actually. And I said, let me ask you a question. Does anybody here know what lead is? Not one hand went up. The top producers in all of New York City in the brokerage world, not one of them knew what it was. But understanding that and then going to other clients to talk about why that's important, now it's part of the whole dialogue, but back then it wasn't. And those are the kinds of things. On the accounting side, that was actually, I was an accountant. I had a CPA and all that, and we were doing financial analysis for what was then Cushman Realty. And I said to John Cushman, who was my mentor, I said, hey, John, here's we do the analysis and we're doing the NPV, but we should really be talking about this thing called FASB 13, which is accounting for leases, and talk to our clients about the P&L, the result to their income statement and their balance sheet on the transactions that we're working on. And he looked at me and he said, what are you talking about? This was the top broker in the world. And so we started going to and talking to the clients, and it was a light switch on moment for him. And at that point, he took me to like every meeting that he went to forever, because it was something that was brand new. It's not new anymore. Everybody does it now. So now we got to be thinking about what's next. And that's why you're always learning. It never ends.
So a good example would be the series that's upcoming with CoreNet that they're working on now on AI in the real estate. There's constantly innovations that are taking place, and that's very important for you, Lou, right? I mean, your company and as well as your CFO wants to know that you are able to get that real estate information, but it's not a hallucination, that these facts are real, not made up, but it can give you market data immediately anywhere in the world. So how are you learning about that? What do you hope that will come back to CoreNet as they explore it further? Because it is one of those breaking things within the industry.
Look, 100%. AI is another pretty significant tool in the toolbox, right? So, and as we grow and as we develop in our careers, we are acquiring those tools, whether it's things with CoreNet or whether it's going to school for advanced degrees or meeting people. But it's also, look, I started in the industry before people had computers at desks. And, before CAD was a thing and people were drawing on boards, and I was there.
Before there was an internet.
Before this internet. And we just keep acquiring new tools to help us do our jobs better and more efficiently. And we, and AI is huge. And I'm lucky to be with a company who is promoting AI and telling us that this is a tool that we should be using, and I've been using it. And it's interesting. You have to play with it a bit, but it has become my instant professor, right? So something comes up, a term on a lease, or something comes up with ESG, I can go to GBT and type in the question in any format I want, and it's amazing. It's as if I just asked my professor, and they had the answer right next to me. And that's an incredible tool. I know some people at work who are putting spreadsheets in there and letting them do the analysis for them. Now they check the work, but it's super fast and powerful.
When I started as an analyst, basically at Cushman Realty, and that was 1986, I was using a IBM PC with an external floppy drive, and we could only do, it was Lotus 123, and we can only do 16 columns by 64 rows. That's it. That was all the RAM there was. And now we're talking about artificial intelligence. Now, nobody could even predict that you could have done spreadsheets as fast. And by the way, I would input the information, and then I'd push calc, and go get a cup of coffee, because it would take a minute and a half to do the calc. Technology has moved so far, and that's 38 years. So 38 years from now, where are we going to be? And it seems like it couldn't go that far. How much more can we do than artificial intelligence, right? But make no mistake, it will evolve, and it will be so much faster, better, smarter than we could ever possibly imagine.
So we were talking about market studies and we're talking about financial equations, but even on the architectural side of things and floor plans, it's just a amazing what can be created and the advancement of the tools to be able to help you place somewhere more quickly. That is an example of continuous learning that you get in the interaction with other people that are part of our organization. Kind of explain that.
Well, I think, you talk about with architecture, they can imagine a space. We're sitting here in Steelcase, right? You can imagine a space with nothing. So when we're showing space, we're showing empty, completely gutted space, but we're showing them renderings and actual visuals of what it will look like via, video. That, so it's very hard for people to visualize things. And so I think that that's probably, from that side of the business, it's probably the most important thing of all. Then you get into sustainability and all the evolution of how air is being handled and, the cleanliness of the air and how it's being filtered, and also the amount of energy that it's consuming has become so important to corporate America. So that stuff has evolved tremendously.
Yeah. Now, Lou touched upon the different meetings that are set up, different workshops that happen, the interactions that you get at those meetings. But you actually have been named one of the top instructors for the MCR designation, the Masters in Corporate Real Estate, that CoreNet provides in a formal setting, both through the online learning and in-person learning. Can you talk a little bit about the MCR, how your interactions with various corporate executives that attend have been for you, and what goes on in those meetings, and what is the value of actually taking an MCR class?
Well, I started doing that probably 6 or 7 years ago. What's interesting is I don't have an MCR myself, which I actually regret, and I still to this day think maybe I should, but I didn't. But so I teach a lot of the finance and negotiation type things, accounting for leases or negotiating leases and term sheets and that sort of thing. And so I did some in-person ones back a few years, and then COVID happened, and now since then, all the ones that I've done have not been in person, they've been online. So I've done both. It's much better in person, of course, because you develop personal contact and relationships with people, so it's just better. But online is terrific too. Everybody should do it, and particularly if you can do it in person. If you're on the end user side, that's one thing, but if you're on the service provider side, there's nothing better than going to an MCR class, in my opinion, because you get to spend 2.5 days with other people, and that's how you build those relationships. And I think we're going to talk more about joining committees and getting involved in CoreNet from that. Personal relationships drive everything, whether it's through mentorship or whether you're in a class and you get to meet those people, and now you're communicating and you're having lunch, and you develop those personal relationships that you can't beat. So that's really important.
Now, I remember when I got my MCR designation, I specifically went to as many in-person classes as I could, but more importantly on the West Coast, so I could learn things that were happening outside of the region that I knew like the back of my hand. And that was in the early days of the internet. So I got to interact with people from Google, from a variety of different internet organizations, where it gave me a lead or a head start on what to do to take back to my CFO on what best practices were there. So, Lou, what is your interaction with the MCR? What do you think about it? New York is going to make a bigger effort to bring more classes here to the city so that more of our members can take them.
Well, I echo what you said. The MCR, the value of it is, obviously the classes and the content that you learn is invaluable and important. Again, more tools for your toolbox. But the relationships the people you meet are from such a diverse group, and you spend quality time with them. It's not like a half hour where you have a lunch. It's 2.5 days. So you're dining with them, you're hanging out with them, you're meeting them. you're working with them. There's some group efforts. And to this day, I mean, I got my MCR probably 10, 15 years ago. When I go to a CoreNet event and I see people who I met, they could be from San Francisco or could be from Houston or from Canada or whatever, and we still see each other as if we're best friends. And notably, we probably were in multiple MCR classes together, and in fact, sometimes we coordinated it, so we would be together. But those relationships are invaluable, and it's amazing. So many years later, you can call on that person. They can call on me and say, "Hey, I'm in town. I'd love to see your building," or "Hey, I'm working on a project. You have some experience. What's your experience?" And that's the type of relationship and learning that you get through the MCR, not just the book stuff, but the people.
Yeah. How can someone find out a little bit more about the MCR classes that are offered?
Well, I think you just go online to CoreNet Global. Or I think CoreNet New York City has it as well, but they'll probably link to Global, and it's all out there. And, we always do the symposiums, and always at the symposiums they have CoreNet classes in advance of the 2.5 days before, which is a great time to do it. Like I said, I truly regret that I haven't done it. I still say to myself I should do it, if for no other reason than, for learning, but also developing those relationships. I'm a little scared if I go into a class that I teach, though. That would be a little difficult because I might need to sit in the back and put tape over my mouth.
We also have the Eastern Regional Symposium coming up in New York City, which is a rare opportunity for people to take advantage of people from all over the East Coast that are experts in their field coming in and teaching them about projects or innovations that are happening in their backyard, like Washington, D.C. or Atlanta or others. Can you speak a little bit of the value of going to an ERS, either one of you?
So the symposium, so when you talk about going to the summits where you have thousands of people, thousands of people in the summits, which is once a year now. And then the Eastern Regional Symposium, which will be on the East Coast this year in New York, it's a much more intimate event. And so you spend more quality time with people that are closer to your region, and the classes are smaller, and you have opportunities to go on more tours of buildings or of properties or of sites that you wouldn't necessarily have that opportunity otherwise. So I think there's so many things. CoreNet's not the only organization that offers education, but even just with CoreNet, there are so many avenues that you could go. There's so many opportunities to learn. But there are a lot of other real estate organizations, or even schooling, financial education available that'll help you in your career. But through CoreNet, the trick is you just have to make the effort to do it. You have to look it up, and you have to sign up, and you have to show up.
I would add to that, you go to the symposiums, which used to be 2 times a year. Now they're only 1, although they do them in other parts of the world now. But you do the symposium, the Eastern Regional Symposium, and there are lots of, I know we call them not classes, but they're presentations. And those presentations are, what's happening in the market today that you need to understand and learn. So when you go to those, that's learning. Now, you may go to 10 of them and only 3 or 4 are really, hit you. By the way, there are presentations by there are speakers at the opening and closing presentations.
Top keynoters.
Keynote address,
Yeah.
Thank you. And you always are learning, and it's different kinds of things each time. I've developed a relationship with the woman who started art lifting. I don't know if you've heard of that, but she's unbelievable. And I was so taken by her keynote address at the last symposium. I have actually met with her. I'm actually meeting with her tomorrow afternoon, and have introduced them. What they do is they represent artists that are handicapped. I mean, handicapped where they're drawing with a paintbrush on the helmet because the rest of their body's paralyzed, and they're unbelievable artists. And they sell their art, and they sell it to corporate America, to people like you. I don't know if you've done anything with them, but it's such a great cause. That's so important too. So you never know where it's going to come from. When you go to these things, you just got to do it.
So, Lou, you work for an organization that supports you in your learning. They want you to be an expert in the field. You're very fortunate to have that. How do you approach your organization, particularly coming out of COVID, when they're making you come back to the office full time, to convince them that taking some of these classes, being a part of CoreNet, what kind of effort do you make to kind of, what's the worst they're going to say? No, right? But how do you go about approaching people that work for you to support your education moving forward?
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that the people that I work for value the education and support me in these efforts, the time that it takes to do things like this and to step away from the desk. But it's not a hard ask for me, and that's I'm very fortunate. That said, it's not just about real estate. I'm a one of one at Hearst, right? So, or there's very few of us. I shouldn't say one of. There's one of few at Hearst who are real estate minded, and so it's important that we're in tune with what's happening in the world, so we can bring it back to the organization. And I think they know that, they realize that. So it's not a hard sell.
Yeah. Now, Dale, I teach at NYU. Pratt has a real estate program. Baruch has an excellent real estate program. There are continuing education courses you could take there. I know your own firm tries to educate people within their organization. But, the new way of learning, our podcasts, are going to YouTube and looking things up. If you need to kind of touch base with other ways to learn, what kind of suggestions would you make? What books would you recommend they read? What magazines and newspapers should they be in touch with? I'm constantly telling students NYU provides them with so many resources, not just in the library, but free subscriptions to the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. How is that important in terms of self-educating yourself?
Well, in my business, being a real estate broker in particular, information is critically important. So all day, every day, I'm getting text messages, not text, email messages that link me to various publications, Cranes and others that talk about transactions that are happening. I read the New York Post every single morning. That's the first thing that I do, and I read it on my iPad. And I can't tell you how many times I read an article in the business section. Always, I read an article, and all of a sudden it's like, and I take a screenshot of it and I send it to somebody because it's affecting them, whether it's Paul Dara at Citadel or other different people that are global heads of real estate, because they're talking about something that's important to that. So that's like real time kind of marketing in a way, because I'm providing information to those people that's helpful. LinkedIn is really important. I think that having a LinkedIn presence, but also following what other people are talking about. And there's a lot of times that they're giving you links to different stories. So we're kind of inundated with it. It's a little bit overwhelming, but you really have to be doing that all the time. Reading and reading and reading, and I when I work out, I'm always listening to podcasts. So there's a T-Rep I like because they talk about market all across the country. I listen to the CoreNet one when I can, and I have other 3 or 4 or 5 that I listen to. Some of them are strictly real estate. Some of them are more economic driven, or about what's happening out there in the finance world.
So, Lou, I remember you used to listen to Freakonomics. I'm sure you listen to other things now. What are some of your favorite podcasts? Where do you get information that you're interested in? And how important is it for you not to just understand what's happening in real estate, but be really conversant in what's happening in the culture of this world?
That's a tough one. There's so many different avenues that you get information. I have a whole list of podcasts I listen to, Freakonomics and many others. But Wall Street Journal, New York Times for my news, and then I'll listen to Freakonomics, or I'll be on LinkedIn. There's lots. The more people you're connected to LinkedIn, the more you have options to read. So you can just sort of peruse through and see what people are pointing to see what's happening in the world. But I'm also in the media industry, so the newspaper and the news and what's happening is constantly around us. So I try to be in tune.
Cranes New York is another good one. Real Estate Weekly, The Real Deal, the Commercial Observer. These are all important things that you can get information of what's happening in the marketplace, where industry trends are going, and what will help you be more self-educated at what's happening in the field to be conversant. Your idea of sharing things with your clients, I think, is really important, right? They're very busy, but to put it in front of them is helpful. And Lou, your idea of staying on top of LinkedIn connections and what people are posting there, just setting aside some time to kind of go over what's happening in the industry and with your connections. Both of you and myself are volunteers today, and we're participating in the Learning and Development Committee's broadcast of this podcast. But would you recommend that people get involved in committees, and what kind of committees are available? I often joke that I couldn't have built a skyscraper on the Manhattan skyline if I wasn't involved in the dinner committee, because I realized who was full of crap and who wasn't when they promised a table that was going to be bought for an event. And so that's important, because you develop relationships in a different way, who can deliver, who cannot deliver. And you also interact with your peers in a variety of industries, which is the unique nature of our industry. So you may not have every day to interact with an architect or with a furniture salesman or someone who is an expert in project management. But those kind of committee activities allow you to get to know someone in a different way, and the learning that happens on a human level is very positive. Lou, you wanted to comment on that?
Yeah, that's 100%. I mean, that goes back to the MCR classes. The time that you spend, if you join a committee, you're putting yourself in a position to work with other people that aren't at your office. And by being a volunteer and you're working,
a committee of 1+.
Yeah. So, but now you're in a committee and you're now working on a common goal, whether it's an event or whatnot, with these other people, and you're learning a lot about them. And in some ways, it's almost like playing golf with someone. You learn a lot about somebody by playing golf with them. You learn a lot about somebody when you work with them on a committee, and you develop those relationships. And you're going to learn a lot of great people out there, and there could be a couple of people you want to stay away from. So you never know.
It's an interesting thing. What was the predecessor firms were IDRC?
CoRe and IDRC.
And IDRC. So at IDRC, they only allowed three people from each service provider company to go to the the annual, or there were two of them at symposiums. And so a guy in our company, Bob Ortiz, I think you know him, he told me, he said, Dale, now that the IDRC and CoRe have merged, you need to get involved in CoreNet, because that became CoreNet. And he said, because if they limit the three people, you want to be one of the three at Cushman and Wakefield that gets invited to go to the annual thing. Now they didn't follow off on that, but that was one of the best things that ever happened to me, because I reached out to Gina Rizzo, and Gina got me involved, and I ended up in a special committee, and then I got on other things, and then I got on the dinner committee, and then the next thing I know, I was on the board, and then I became vice president, as you have done. All three of us have done vice president, president, chair, and I've been involved with the board to this day. And because of that, I have friends, like some of my best friends in the whole world who we share, right, as friends, are part of that organization. And it all started because Bob Ortiz told me that I need to get involved. I don't think there's any more advice you could give to anybody than to get involved in a committee and get more involved in CoreNet, because those personal relationships and the time that you spend with people over cocktails or dinner or lunch or whatever, that's where the real learning can happen. That's not the only place, but it's a very important place.
Okay, we only have time for one more question. This has been an excellent interaction with us, so thank you both. So you both are great mentors and have had mentees in your life. You mentioned Bob Ortiz several times during this broadcast. What kind of advice would you give people that are listening in now, besides joining CoreNet, to kind of improve their learning skills and also to become better in their field? So to kind of sum up what our broadcast today is about. So
what I would say is that the the world is always evolving. So you need to be learning all the time. And as soon as you think you know everything, you're in trouble because you're behind, I guarantee, because it's always changing. If I've learned anything over all the years I've been, it's that. And CoreNet is in an unbelievable place to be able to do that. So, and tied in with all of this, while you're learning, you're building these relationships. And some of those relationships you become a mentor. Some of these relationships you become a mentee. Depends on where you are in your career. But, we talked a little bit about teaching, whether it's the MCR class, I also teach things at Cushman and Wakefield. I learn more when I teach those classes than the students do. And I do that because in order to prepare for it, I have to do a lot of work to lead up to that and to create the curriculum and to understand what's happening. And that's invaluable too. So there's so many different things to do, but you need to allocate time for it and make sure that you understand that if you want to progress and have your career grow, and if that's important to you, the best way to do it is to be learning all the time. And then as you get a little further along in your career, then you can give it back and you can be teaching and you can be mentoring.
Excellent. Lou, what would you like to add?
I'd add to that because I agree 100%. But we need our mentors. We have to mentee people, but we also have to mentor ourselves. We have to take responsibility for our learning. You can't. It's not going to be spoon-fed. You have to go out and do it. And so there are lots of opportunities to explore and to learn. You just have to go out and seek them out and do them. It's in the world with the internet and with podcasts and with YouTube and with AI, there is no excuse, and you can learn anything, anytime, anywhere. I learned this from my children. It's like they don't ask me questions anymore because they have all the answers right at their fingertips and they're figuring it out. And that's a tool that we need to use. So take responsibility. Spend time, budget time to learn, and you'll be successful.
Well, this has been an excellent discussion. I want to thank you both, Dale Schlater and Lou Nowickas. This has been the Learning and Development Committee's Big Apple CoRe podcast for today. This is Brian Schwagel signing off. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you.